Confidence isn't measured by the amount of material possessions or accomplishments. It's more about your attachment style to the perception that you hold of yourself. If you become too attached, you will self-sabotage, because the image that you hold in the outside and the images that other people are perceiving of you isn't necessarily the image you have to hold of yourself, and is not the image that is true of yourself. Individuals' opinion isn't nearly as important as your own core values and virtues. You lack loyalty to yourself when it comes to standing on business to your own virtues and personal values. You call it confidence, I call it aligning more with who you're truly meant to be. But if you're scared to put your crown on, you ain't worthy. I remember being very young, about 3-4 years old. At this point in my life, I was living in the Dominican Republic, and school and the education system there is very different. My school at the time was literally a house. The rooms, like the bedrooms and the living rooms, those were classrooms, and there was this area that must have been the garage, and in this particular day they had all the kids in that area. I remember we were all sitting on these bleachers. I had a notebook and a pen with me, and I was drawing this baby. It was like a simple drawing. It was a baby face. It was a circle, pair of eyes, a little smile, and pointy hair. Everyone is surrounding me, mesmerized about this drawing and complimenting me on how nice it was and asking me these questions. I was a kid, so I didn't really think much of it. At the time, I didn't know that that was the first of the many times that similar situations was going to happen later on in my life. Now, looking back in my mature mind, I realized that as I grew, my emotional and even physical response to people complimenting began to change. As I grew, my skills only developed and I became better. And the compliments became greater. People's faces became more surprised, but I didn't feel that same excitement anymore. I kind of just had this mindset of, if you were to get into art, you would actually see that my art is not that good. There's a lot of people that are greater than me, and I knew I had this great artistic skill, but I was blocking myself from being able to develop it any further, even though I was, with time, still becoming better at it. Fast forward to 4th grade, when I was about 8 years old. Now this is a more proper school. It's still not exactly like the schools that we're more used to over here in the U.S., but it was more proper. So you know how we have to pledge allegiance to the flag before class can start. Well, we did something kind of similar in DR, but instead of being sat down or standing up in our classroom, every single student would be outside in lines, like almost like in a military fashion, standing in line with our hand on our hearts. We had to sing our anthem. Seriously and respectfully, you couldn't play around. They really didn't tolerate if you played around, if you didn't take it serious. I remember one time these older kids were like goofing around. The principal walked up to him. The kid had said something back. The principal turned right around and smacked him, slapped him clean to the back of his head. After I seen that, hey, you better believe I was, what I was thinking. So one day, either before or after we were supposed to get in line to sing, somebody from my class had been going around telling people how good my drawings are, that I'm a really good artist. And this one kid had heard. I bumped into him this one day, and he's basically trying to tell me that he could draw better than me. And I remember we were both going back and forth, making our points about who really draws better. And we had this moment, we were both hyped and charged up, and he said to me, let's have a drawing contest right now. So we literally sat down, pull out our notebooks, and we started going at it. We started drawing. We didn't get to finish because they had called us to get in line to sing. But I remember after that, I must have started being cool with this kid, because I would see him at that same spot and we'll talk for a pretty long time about, the things that we like. This situation was totally different. It wasn't somebody complimenting my artwork. It was somebody challenging it, because this kid was also an artist himself. So I didn't take it too offensive that he told me he could draw better than me. I just simply disagree, because all of the times prior when other people would see my artwork, they all literally told me that this was the best artwork they had ever seen. But the irony in this, it was those same situations that I would kind of downplay myself. This is not being humble. I might have mistook that for humility. But then comes a situation where I'm being tested. I'm reaching back to those moments I was being complimented on my artwork, and I used it for willpower. The difference is that in this situation, when I'm being challenged and I accepted the challenge, I had a sense of elevation in my life. Whenever I was being complimented, I didn't have a sense of elevation in my life. I was sabotaging myself. So I just needed to believe in myself a little bit more. These are situations where I cared too much about the opinions of others and too little about my own great opinion about myself. The only opinion that ever mattered, that had any real impact in my life, was none other than my own. Today I am grateful that I let go of these viewpoints and therefore made room to grow new ones that could actually benefit my life in the end.